Oh, hey. Welcome to the Superpilotish channel. My name is Graham Wilson. And today, in my basement, I'll be talking about not umbrellas, but I'll be talking about flying in the rain. And to answer the question, can airplanes fly in the rain? Of course. Sure, but you got to be careful about some of these things. So, yeah, I see a few people in the chat already. Wrench, Nefarious, and Dan. Hi. Okay. I've flown in the rain, lots and lots of times in my little airplanes that I'm allowed to fly. And if you ever see, you can see some scary YouTube videos about dangerous crosswinds and all this other stuff and big jets like skidding all over the place. Well, that's YouTube for you. Oh, hey, Shecky. And so I figured I was just gonna tell people because I don't think I've done a video about this specifically about flying in the rain, and it was just as usual. I can never come up with a topic for my show, so it's like it's raining out today. Hey, flying in the rain, okay. And but yeah, I think I've done winter flying tips before, and when it comes to weather and flying, everything always kind of one's close to the other. Snow almost turns into rain, almost turns into mist, almost, meteorology is kind of all mix and match. But we'll just talk about rain here today. And what do you got to watch out for and make sure you got a nice, safe flight? So on my whiteboard today, 5. Yes, another super pilot-ish 5. Rain considerations when you're flying. And I guess it's not really in any order of priority or importance, but the first thing that popped into my head was visibility. So of course that makes sense. You're driving your car. Do you want to be driving to 100 miles an hour in your car when it's all rainy out? No. But in a plane, you can't hit anything up in the air. In the air you can't. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, so the visibility, there's a weird thing that happens, and this is if anyone's ever gotten their pilot's license before, or it's asked on every single flight exam that you take, from your private pilot license to your instrument rating license to your commercial license to your ATPL exams. Like it's always there, the same question. And what is the effect of rain on the windshield of your airplane? And so it's one of those things that I like in my little airplane. It doesn't make too much difference at all. It's really not noticeable. But I was reading up on it a little bit more, and it's kind of more if you have like a more of a sloped, like if you're in a big fast jet, the windshield has a little bit more of a slope on it. And that's where the light will refract through the little rain droplets that are on there, and it'll affect the way that your brain sees the objects that are out there. So if you got rain on the windshield, just remember for your exam, it's always more dangerous. So that means that objects will look lower than they actually are. The horizon will look lower than it actually is. So if you're flying up to, maybe you're flying up to, you're out in the mountains or something like that, out in California or Oregon or, British Columbia or something, and you're just flying along and there's like a little bit of rain and you can see you're going to be going over top of a mountain range or something like that. Then you could have the illusion of saying, oh, that mountain range, that looks like I can clear it. But then as soon as you get closer, you're like, oh, no, I can't. So you'll have to give it the gas and over you go. And that'll cut your safety margins a bit more around the mountains. That's something really to watch out for if you're doing that. It's never happened to me. I've never flown out in the mountains too much before. And the planes that I fly don't have a really big slope on the windshield. And so anyways, visibility, watch out for that. And you got to remember too that visibility can change pretty quickly on you. So just because the airport's reporting it, you got to remember that airport, if it's a big airport, the reporting equipment, all their little meters and everything like that, that could be, that could be a mile or two away from where you're taking off if it's a great big airport. So, you got to consider your local considerations and all that. Visibility is kind of one, and and when in doubt, don't go flying. So, okay, that was the one thing. Let's do, and this is an example of how all this meteorology stuff kind of goes all together, and that's that all right, we'll use blue because blue is sort of like water, sort of like rain. Color coordination on the superpilotish channel. Does it get any better? I tell you. Okay, so we're going to talk about the ceiling. I always get mixed up how I spell that. EIIE, ceiling. Okay. Now, your ceiling. So what is the ceiling? it's not the ceiling in my basement here. Uh if you didn't know, the that's what pilots call like the lower edge of clouds. So and then if there's like just one little poofy cloud, that really wouldn't constitute a ceiling, as they say. But it's all overcast and gray, and there's a layer of clouds there. Okay, that's your ceiling, and that's measured in feet above the ground. So, yeah, so you could be flying, if it's going to be rainy, there's like there's all kinds of different types of rain, but if it's kind of a drizzly day like it is out here today, that's where your ceiling could be, it could be a uniform ceiling, the same altitude everywhere. And then, but the ground could kind of, as you're flying along, the ground could be kind of going up into it. And it's not really that big of a deal if you're flying around daytime, but at night, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people, they just say, oh, I'll just scoot underneath these clouds here and I'll make it to my destination. But you can't see that the terrain is rising in front of you. And you'll see that a lot where maybe in not really highly mountainous areas, but areas where there's like kind of a bigger hill. That's when the airplanes will just kind of, as they call it, CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. And we don't like that to happen here on the Super Pilotish channel. So that's why we're reminding people about this. Okay, and so you got to watch out for that ceiling, and it can change. It can go higher, it can go lower. And just because there's a ceiling there, it might be, the visibility might be worse the closer to the cloud you get, because you might have something that the cloud might be raining, but then as you get lower to the ground, it might dissipate a little bit. So, yeah, so ceiling, watch out for that. Now, number 3 coming up. Okay. Now, okay, we're flying around, taking off, not a big deal. We're flying around. Now we're going to come down to land here. And this is something to watch out for. And this makes sense for anyone, if you're driving your car in the rain, same thing. Airplanes are basically kind of driving around on the runway before they get up in the air. So let's see, stopping distance. Okay. Will your stopping distance be more or less? Well, of course, it's going to be longer if it's going to be wet. And this is another thing too, that if you are taking any type of flight training, that you have to know this. There's so you can, if you're driving your car and you're driving along and there's like a big puddle there, and then whoa, you start hydroplaning. Well, airplanes can do that too if they get down onto the ground. And you usually associate hydroplaning in a car with like, oh, there's a big puddle and I lost it. And you spin around and off into the ditch you go. Call up the insurance company. But there's 3 main types of hydroplaning that can happen with your airplane. And so I'll just kind of describe them. I don't think I'll write them down, but this is something that if you're studying to be a private pilot or a commercial pilot, or you are taking your airline transport exams, they'll kind of these questions will be on the written exam, pretty much guaranteed. So we'll say the first type of how could we remember this here? Okay. Well, okay. I was thinking I've never actually made up a little, but I guess I will write it down. It's always good to make up these little acronyms and ways of remembering things. So you're going to talk about your hydroplaning. Okay, hydroplaning. I'll get my secondary whiteboard out here. Okay, hydroplane. Okay, and I just thought of okay, let's just say we're going to remember this, and we are going to remember it for our exam, and we are going to record it for hydroplaning. We're going to record it on our DVR. What does the D stand for, you say? I know, because I can hear you saying it. I was watching on Twitter, looking on Twitter the other day. Some guy was saying that all these aviation YouTube channels are all really corny. And I was like, hey man, I resemble that remark. Yeah. Okay, so here we're gonna go. First type of hydroplaning is dynamic, is what it's called. Dynamic, and we'll remember that. So that's the type of dynamic hydroplaning. That's the type of when you're driving a car, you hit the puddle, and now you've got this. It's basically, they always describe it as a wedge of water. It happens in puddles that are, I read online, and jogged my memory today on it. It's like if you got like about an eighth of an inch, or like 100 thou if you're a machinist, you got like a little puddle like that of standing water. That's the wheel goes into it, pushes the water out of the way, and then it starts kind of floating on top of it. And so that's how you can get the if you've ever seen those airplanes that they kind of, let's see if I got a KD-12X here, I can describe it better. The old messy workbench. I don't think I'll ever clean this up now that I do this show. Okay, we got our little, here's our front wheels on our tail dragger. And you ever see those tail dragger planes, or like it might be like a Super Cub or something like that with great big Tundra tires, and they're just kind of booting across the water like that. And you say, wow, that's crazy, because it is. those guys, they wreck a lot of planes, but it's one of those things that, like, when people go to the casino, they always lose, but you never hear about it. So like these guys that go scooting across the water in their airplane looking all cool, and it does look cool, but they flip a lot of those too. But that is basically one great big dynamic hydroplane when they're going on the lake like that. And so if you can do it on a lake, you can do it on a runway too. I would prefer to not do it at all, but hey. Yeah, I always I think the last time I was talking about your fun to risk level, and those guys like to take a lot of risks, and I guess it's really fun, but I'll take their word for it. Okay, the next, we are recording this on our mental DVR. The next one is viscous. Viscous. Okay. Now, viscous, I think about that as like viscous is like, viscosity of oil, and then so basically it's like if you got oil on the runway, or I've seen it where it's like a newly paved runway, and then it rains, it can look very shiny. It's not standing water, it's not a puddle, but it can still be kind of slippery, and it'll increase your stopping distance. Your viscous hydroplaning, it's basically if you got kind of like grease on the runway, just a little bit of water and grease, and it's kind of like an oily viscosity on the runway. Think of it that way. Okay, and then our next one. So the next one here is like when you're doing your airline transport exams. This will definitely be on one of your exams. So we're going to talk about, it's called reverted rubber hydroplaning. Reverted rubber. Okay, guys, get your minds out of the gutter. Okay, here we go. Reverted rubber hydroplaning. So that's when the wheel goes down there, and you'll usually find that more on jets, I've heard, and so that's why they put that on the airline transport exams a little bit more than on your commercial or your private pilot license exams. Reverted rubber is when the wheel. I don't have a wheel around here. I'll have to get creative. Okay. Let's do. Oh, hey, what do I got? I got some cardboard around here? Oh man, we'll go old school and get. Yes, okay, got it. Boom. This is my list of things to do that I didn't really do. Well, I did some of those. I did knock off all those lists on the one show, but I still haven't done a show live in Detroit. I was supposed to do that in August, but I got everything else kind of knocked off. All right, so let's do it old school. Kick it old school. We're going to talk about reverted rubber hydroplaning. Ooh, fun stuff. And I got the old. I got 2 whiteboards and a cardboard. Man, we're going all out today. Here is a wheel. And it's not a perfect circle, so that means I'm not insane. Cool. And yeah, so what happens? We'll say that we're going to be going. I don't really like the smell of this Sharpie. I like the smell of the older markers better. Yeah, it still does the job though. Anyways, no. Here we go. We got this here, and we're on the ground. Our airplane is coming this way. So what happens is that you're going to jam on the brakes here, and it actually, what happens is that with the friction that's here on the bottom, it actually melts. It gets so hot that it melts the rubber, and that it melts the rubber, and it turns into steam actually. So I don't know how you draw steam off of here. Something like that. And then what you do is it melts off the rubber on the bottom of your tire, and then it turns into steam, and you're actually kind of scooting along on a little layer of steam, so you can't stop. Now, when the bigger the bigger airplanes, they're all equipped with anti-lock brakes, anti-skid devices, whatever you want to call it. They have reverse thrust, they have beta for propellers. There's lots of ways to stop there. So it's not really a big deal, even if you're flying on your big jet. They got lots of things that can stop them, and pretty much the same as if it was a dry runway. I mean, it will take a little bit longer, but it's pretty good the way they got that. And yeah, so there's your 3 types of hydroplaning that you recorded on your mental DVR: dynamic, viscous, and reverted rubber. Okay. There you go. There's your lesson for today, you pilot students there. What other considerations do we have now? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, stopping distance. Oh, actually, that was number 4. Stopping distance more for hydroplaning. Okay, so they kind of go together. Hydroplaning. I got my little cheat sheet down here. Hydroplaning. And I read my cheat sheet wrong. How do you like that? Yeah. Kind of reminds me of this guy that was like cheating off of me, and I don't know, cheat sheets and cheating on an exam, and then like still getting it wrong. It's like there's a dude when I was in flight college there's this guy we were taking. It was funny because the first year we had to take this health class. Basically, it was like gym class kind of thing. They teach you about like nutrition and stay healthy as being a pilot. So I could see why they did that. And so there's this one guy, he sat next to me, and he said, like, I barely knew the guy. This was like maybe 6 weeks into the program or something like that. And he's like, "Hey, you're smart. I'll cheat off of you." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know, man. I didn't study for this stuff. I was studying for the math exam, or I don't know how I'm gonna do on this. Don't cheat off of me, man." So as it turns out, my very first exam in that like health class, gym class, I failed it because I didn't study at all. I was like, "Yeah, this is common sense." And I failed the exam. The dude that cheated off of me, he failed too, and he got all mad at me. And I'm like, "Dude, I told you I didn't study, man." So and then I thought, okay, I got to really concentrate on this because there's no way I'm getting kicked out. There's no way I'm getting kicked out of flight college, or for failing gym. Like that'd be so embarrassing. So things turned out okay in the end, and I passed and passed and passed. And it actually forced me to study a little bit more about health, so I can stay maybe a little healthier, keep my medical going, so I can go flying. The good old days, I tell you. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so here we go. We're going to say number 5 is going to be, uh, we're going to say changing conditions. Okay. So that's the whole thing about changing conditions. Oh, well, changing conditions abbreviated because I didn't feel like writing the whole thing. And so what can happen there is we're living in a 3D world in aviation, so that it might be raining on the ground, but then you get up in the air and it's colder, and now you got freezing rain. So you can get it where it's sort of freezing rain coming out of the cloud, and then the freezing part of it kind of warms up by the time it gets to the ground, and it's just water. But you go up a few thousand feet, now you got like this freezing rain. And if you've ever driven your car in freezing rain, that's not cool. The road gets slippery. But like up in the air, if you're getting freezing rain that's building up on your airplane, if you could go into a little sprinkle of it, if you have like a big jet, those guys, they can fly through a layer of that if they know it's clear on the other side. Or they can climb up through it and then they pop out on top and they're okay because they have the leading edges of the wings on the big jets, especially, they're heated. So it's like you just turn on the heat and there you go. It's not going to melt on the leading edge of your wing. And yeah, it's like, and you got your other flight instruments, pitot, heat, all this other stuff. It's all heated up. And so temporarily, yeah, you could probably pop through that. Other airplanes, they have like these little rubber bladders on the front of the wing, and if it builds up a little bit, they expand with compressed air. They'll blow up these little bladders, kind of like a little mini balloon, and it pops off the ice, and then there we go. But on little airplanes that I fly, they don't have any of that. So if you run into any freezing rain without any of that anti-ice or any de-icing or anti-icing capabilities in your plane, it builds up and it just stays there. So that destroys your lift and things can get dangerous in a hurry. So that's why you have to watch out for changing conditions, and that could be with freezing rain, or it could even be light conditions. The heavier, you might be legal to fly during the daytime, but the clouds are so heavy it's kind of dark, even though the time is correct that it's daytime. And I have had that before where it's like a really heavy layer of overcast, and it's like pretty much pitch black, but you look at your watch and it's like, oh, this is still technically daylight for another 2 minutes. It's like, I'm legal to fly here, like yeah, just because you're legal doesn't mean it's safe. And unless you got your night rating and stuff, but that's something else to watch out for too. That it can be a little bit darker. It can get, and then once it's nighttime, you can fly through freezing rain and not even notice it because it's dark. You won't notice it building up on the windscreen. And I know one pilot, she did that. She told me about it. I'm like, oh my God. She was with a student and she was flying a cross country flight at night. And there's just kind of like a misty, freezing mist kind of in the air. And they noticed that the plane was not, they needed more and more power to hold their altitude. And then they had, they're trying carburetor heat. They're trying all this stuff. They couldn't figure out why do they need more and more power. And then they just landed. They made it back to the airport. Then they got out and they noticed the whole plane was just covered with ice. And like even on the windshield, they could see through it. But it was just this thin layer of ice that was just over the whole front of the plane. So if they would have kept going, would have ran out of lift and bye-bye. So they were lucky that day, that night. And so, yeah, the conditions can change. Things get cooler at night. So if it's raining, now you're going to get a higher chance of ice developing. So there we go. A few considerations. Talking airplanes, fun stuff. Okay. We'll review these for the learning factor of recency. Okay, we're going to talk about visibility here. Yep, so that could be, watch out for the objects that will appear higher. Yeah. And then the horizon looks kind of lower than it actually is out there. The ceiling, watch out for that. It might not be defined. At night, you could be danger of rising terrain, especially stopping distance. It's going to be more, not too bad, but watch out on that. Give yourself a little extra room. Don't approach too fast. Hydroplaning, that's our DVR, right? Let's see if I can remember that. DVR, I recorded that in my mental DVR. Dynamic, viscous, and reverted rubber. Good DVR. And there we go. And changing conditions. You don't know, man. I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. So watch out for that. There we go. We are all flying safely now in the rain. Cheat sheet complete. Boy, as a pilot, it always feels so good to get rid of your checklist is all complete. I got everything on my checklist. Complete. All right, very good. And so we'll just check a few chat things. I was pretty much ignoring the whole chat here, but see if there's any questions. All right. Oh, here we go. This is an interesting little bit of Davis Wing B-24 and canards are apparently affected by rain. I think I've heard that about canards, but that could be a canard. Yeah. Ooh, this is getting corny, just like the guy on Twitter said. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. But that's a good consideration too. If you've never flown a canard before and you're hopping into it, do a little Google search on that. Cool. And Dustin popped in here too. There he is. Hello. Good morning. Shecky and Company. All right. What else we got here? Well, Pyramid 7 popped in here too. Yo, yo, yo to you. Didn't see that. This is a good one, Dan. What's it? ERBUGT. Emergency backup. Go to second whiteboard. There we go. Okay. All right. Now this one here, Dan. Airliners leave 1 pound of rubber per wheel per landing. That'd be, I don't know if that's true or not, but I know, every time I go into land at a big runway, like there's always these like black strips that are on the ground. And I guess, probably on some of the bigger planes, I bet you they would lose 1 pound per wheel per landing. Because, you got to think about it when they're going from, say, these guys are touching down at, I don't know, what would they be touching down at? Probably 100 knots, 90 knots, 100 knots, depending on the airplane. So, which would be, what would that be in miles? 100 knots is 115 miles per hour. So if your wheel is stopped, your landing gear goes down and it goes from stopped to instantly spin up to 115 miles per hour. So there's going to be a big acceleration there, and I can see that stripping off a bunch of rubber. That's an interesting one there, Dan. You know what? I'm just going to confirm that right now without even knowing. Sounds good to me. Okay. What do we got here? All right. Do I want to go up for a ride? Sure. Let me know. Anyways, here we go. What else we got here? Okay, here we go. This is a good, this is very piloty and apropos. So when you have ice and you know it, you should land fast to be safe. Don't know your stall speed, my opinion. Yes. And they also say too that if you know you have ice on your wing, you don't want to be, and you're flying, you have some ice on maybe the leading edge or maybe even some freezing rain. It'll kind of streak across the top. If you're flying a high wing like a Cessna 150 or 152, you'll see the ice on the strut coming down, and you'll also see it building up on the front of the wheel. It'll be shiny. So and then you got some ice there. So yeah, I would say land a little bit higher because your stall speed is going to increase. And generally they say don't use any flap, because what you could do is you don't really know how that ice is affecting your airfoil. If it's working, it's like if it if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you put down your flaps, now you're changing the shape of your airfoil, and you don't know what's going to happen. So stick with what works. Land a little bit faster. Sure, like maybe even up to maybe 10 knots faster. If you got a nice long runway, that's pretty good. So yeah, very good. I've had to land with ice on before, and that's what I did. I increased my approach speed by about 10. I had like super long runways. Like how long is one runway? 5,600 feet. The other one's like 9,000. So I just it's quite a bit. So I came in at like 90 knots. And once you're over the runway, if you stall it and you're only a couple feet off the runway, big deal. Now you're down. So as it was, the plane just behaved normally, but could have been worse. You don't know. Okay, what else we got here? All right. What's this? 22 tires on an A380? Yeah, I'd buy that. There's there was that big old Antonov. I forget what that was. It used to come into Windsor here every years ago, and it went off the end of the runway because the guys were kind of coming in too fast and too high. It skidded off the end of the runway, but it was kind of cool because they were always talking about extending the length of the runway here in our town. And then there was this big Antonov coming in. It's not around anymore. Kind of disappeared from the Ukraine. But yeah, it was kind of neat when that came in, and it skidded off the end of the runway, and it was all in the mud, and they had all these tires on it. If you've ever seen that great big Antonov pictures of it, I forget the number, 220 something, 224. I don't know, great big monster Antonov, and it would shake all the houses in town when it took off. But yeah, it skidded off the end of the runway, and what they did was they brought out steel plates because it kind of went in and sunk into the mud a bit. But those the Russians that designed that Antonov, they had it so you could individually, like hydraulically, you could just kind of lift up each wheel individually, and they had 24 tires or something. They're just like, okay, so the guy in the cockpit just like, okay, lifted up the wheel. They stuck in a chunk of metal, put the wheel down, lifted up the next wheel, stuck in another wheel, and they just they kind of picked up each wheel individually, stuck a bunch of metal plates under there, and then towed it out of the mud. So it's like those Russian engineers, man, they're very low tech but elegant at the same time, and burn lots of gas. So very cool. Or actually, that would probably be Soviets. That Antonov was made during the Soviet times. So all right. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, Ranch. The original tires on the B-36 were like house size before they figured out how to make trucks with multiple tires. Yeah, I saw that at the. They had those wheels at the. They got a B-36 at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, and they have the original tires for them, and they're gigantic, man. It was like the biggest tire in the world ever made at the time, and so they found that. For the B-36, there's like these huge tires that are like 10 feet high. Like it should be on like one of those tractors out like in the oil sands or something like that. And they're excavating stuff. Gigantic tires. And so, yeah, they found out that when they tried to land, they would just blow out. But the B-30s and those big tires are, they probably would have been okay for landing on like grass, like B-17 or something like that. They had great big tires, and they just figured, well, this plane's this much bigger. We'll just make everything this much bigger, and we'll make the wheels that much bigger. And So they'd blow those tires out, and then yeah, they came to that's the B36 that used the truck. So they'd have four, like on each little retractable gear there. They had four wheels instead of one great big gigantic one. But that's a monster wheel, man. Big plane too. So that is true, Ranch. I've seen that in person. Okay, what else we got here? Okay. Yeah, there we go. Surface pressure was too high for all but 3 US runways. Yeah. Yeah, and you think about that too. Like if you got the tread, what would you call that? The tread pattern that's on the ground. Like that's a lot of pressure on there. PSI per, chunk of rubber on the ground too. So yeah, that's a consideration. Okay, and there we go. So that's about it for today. If you're going to be flying in the rain, all right, be safe, have fun. And yeah, that's about it. So, okay, today's Monday, so I'll be back on Wednesday because I do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Eastern. We'll just kind of shut her down. And thank you for watching. Bye. End stream. Bye.